Welcome to The Critique. It is Tuesday, February 24th, 2026. Today we are reviewing conference transcripts covering Tel-Hai University's new status AI integration and the war's impact on academia. The material currently treats the establishment of Tel-Hai University and the integration of AI as two separate major themes, missing the opportunity to present them as a single, interdependent ecosystem.
Yeah, diving right in through the lens of structure and flow, the weakness here is that the submission presents a totally fragmented narrative.
It really does.
You have these hyper-technical discussions about AI tools like chatbots and Gemini on one hand.
Right.
And then completely separate geopolitical discussions about strengthening the northern periphery and university city concepts on the other. The listener is just left with two distinct stories that don't fully reinforce each other.
Exactly. So the suggestion for improvement is that we need to fuse these narratives. The critique should argue that the location itself, the periphery or the north, is actually the catalyst for the innovation rather than just the setting for it.
Right. The geography isn't just a backdrop.
It's the engine. And looking at concrete examples for improvement, you can connect Z. Feldman and Offer Rivlin.
Yeah, because right now, they are miles apart in the text.
Take Z. Feldman's concept of the university city and the 8,000 student target and explicitly link it to Offer Rivlin's data on the Agri-Food Tech Administration.
Don't just list them separately.
Exactly. You want to show that the actual reason Tel-Hai can innovate in AI is because it uses the region as a living lab.
Which is a term they actually mention in the text regarding the diverse climate and topography.
Right, the specific topography requires the solutions Rivlin is building. The university city isn't just housing, it is the test bed.
And that leads right into another concrete example of how to fix this, which is reframing the periphery argument.
Because currently Minister Kish just gives this general polite praise for the university as an anchor.
Which is nice, but it's just fluff. Instead of that, use Arik Dayan's specific metric. He aims for a 4 billion shekel contribution to the regional product.
Frame the AI curriculum not just as modernization, but as the only viable way to achieve that economic independence in a remote region.
And obviously, these are just a few ways to solve the problem, but another example is synthesizing the new student.
Yeah, use the student panel data with Omri Schreiber and Sivrin Koren to show that students aren't just coming for a degree.
Because, honestly, that can be done via AI or Zoom.
Right. They are coming for the community resilience that AI cannot replicate. You have to position the physical campus as the antidote to digital isolation.
Moving on to the second major issue.
The discussion regarding artificial intelligence is currently too reliant on optimistic buzzwords and lacks a critical examination of the friction between automated efficiency and human skill acquisition.
Yeah, looking at this through the core essence and engagement lens, the weakness is that the material is heavy on generalities about changing the role of the teacher and moving from knowledge to skills.
It feels too safe.
Very safe. Speakers like Dr. Alan Segal and Prof. Itan Adar mention critical thinking, but the material doesn't sufficiently challenge how we measure that when the machine does the work. It really lacks tension.
So the suggestion for improvement here is to introduce constructive skepticism.
I like that.
The narrative needs to highlight the risks and the specific pedagogical conflicts rather than just the solution. Let's get into some concrete examples for improvement on this front.
Well, you can challenge the process versus result debate. Dr. Segal mentions testing students on their prompts rather than the final essay.
Right.
The critique should push this further. Is evaluating a prompt actually a proxy for understanding the core material, or is it just a technical skill?
And you can contrast this directly with Marav Zarbib's approach in the Ministry of Education.
Because they shut off the internet for the first part of the data science exam.
Exactly. This clash between open AI and closed exams needs to be highlighted as a central tension, not just two different anecdotes sitting on different pages.
Another concrete example is what we could call the efficiency trap. Prof. Judy Schwartz from the Council for Higher Education celebrates AI for shortening the academic year and speeding up grading.
But the prober or the critique reader needs to ask, does faster grading actually equal better feedback?
Right. Does a shorter semester serve the deep learning goals mentioned by Dr. Yonat Nassim?
The listener should be advised to pit these viewpoints against each other to create a more compelling dialectic.
Let them fight a little bit on the page. And then there is the human element contradiction.
Yeah, Dr. Avi Milievsky warns about AI erasing cultural nuances. He gives that great example of a Haredi lecturer and a Druze student.
The critique should advise the listener to use this specific anecdote to challenge the personalization claims made by Minister Kish regarding the 720-degree view of the student.
Can a data dashboard really capture that kind of partnership? The material has to lean into that skepticism.
Definitely. Now shifting gears to the student demographic.
The portrayal of the student body oscillates confusingly between describing them as fragile victims of the war and empowered demanding consumers, which undermines the clarity of the policy recommendations.
Yeah, applying the audience alignment lens here. The weakness is exactly that mixed messaging. In the student panel, there's a mix of pleading for certainty and accommodations from Sivankaran
Right.
versus the narrative of students as resilient pioneers rebuilding the North from Shuli Sapir and Omri Schreiber. The current draft leaves the audience completely unsure if the new student needs coddling or challenging.
So the suggestion for improvement is to create a unified, resilient innovator profile. The feedback should guide the listener to frame the student's demand for flexibility not as a weakness, but as a requirement for their dual role as active citizens, reservists, and scholars.
Let's give some concrete examples for improvement so they know how to actually execute this.
The Mina Harouche archetype is perfect for this.
Absolutely. Use Mina Harouche, who is a mother of four, a PhD candidate, and working while studying as the central avatar for the new student.
Instead of treating her as a feel-good human interest story, use her profile to justify Prof. Schwartz's policy on condensing the academic week to 3 days.
Right? The 3-day week isn't about taking it easy. It is about business efficiency for a busy client.
And that ties into reframing certainty. When Sivan Koran asks for certainty from the institution, reframe this not as a request for easier exams, but as a business demand from a consumer who is investing time and money.
You can connect this to MK Kaidi-Schwitzrit's legislation on affirmative action for reservists. It is not charity. It is an adjustment to the client's reality.
If the university wants that resilient innovator, it has to change its operating model to accommodate them.
Which makes the argument for policy change so much more robust.
Moving to our final major point today, there is a significant disconnect between the high-level ideological proclamations of the politicians and the practical operational realities described by the academic administrator.
Yet looking at this through the completeness and focus lens, the weakness here is glaring. The interviews with Minister Eliyahu and Minister Kish feel like distinct political manifestos that just float above the rest of the content.
Eliyahu talks about ideology and roots and bureaucratic reform, while Kish talks about financial literacy and Bible study.
These sections feel entirely disconnected from the panels discussing agritech and AI grading. It's like two different conferences.
The suggestion for improvement is to use an implementation lens. The listener needs to take the politician's broad claim and immediately stress test them against the realities mentioned by the field experts in the other panel.
And to give some concrete examples for improvement here, you can start with the values clash.
Minister Eliyahu argues that the system has lost its ideology and focuses too much on universalism.
The listener should be advised to contrast this directly with the academy and high school program mentioned by Prof. Schwartz.
Right. If high schoolers are taking academic courses, which are often universal or global in nature, how does that square with the demand for more localized religious roots?
The material just ignores that friction completely right now. Another example is the bureaucracy narrative. Minister Eliyahu complains about the deep state clerks blocking reform.
However, Prof. Schwartz and the Council for Higher Education describe a very cooperative relationship with the ministry.
The critique should suggest highlighting this contradiction. Is the system actually stuck, or is it moving fast, as evidenced by the rapid approval of the Tel-Hai University status mentioned by Zeev Feldman?
You have to make them reconcile those two realities. And finally, as an example, look at resource allocation.
Always follow the money. Minister Kish mentions huge budget increases up to 100 billion shekels.
The critique should advise the listener to trace where that money is actually going based on the other panels. Is it going to the social, emotional learning Dr. Malevsky calls for?
Or is it just going to hardware for the one computer per child vision?
Hardware versus software, essentially.
Exactly. Okay, so to summarize the main actionable takeaways for the listener today, first, fuse the geographic and technological narratives into one University of the North ecosystem story.
Second, move beyond AI buzzwords by highlighting the specific tensions between automated efficiency and human critical thinking.
Third, define the new student as a resilient multitasker to justify flexible policy change.
And fourth, anchor political rhetoric in the specific operational realities of the academic field.
As a final thought here on the potential of the material, if these threads are tied together, it moves from being just a conference report to a real blueprint for national resilience.
It becomes a cohesive argument about the future of education in a conflict zone. We invite you to submit the revised structure for a second review once you've implemented these changes. This has been The Critique.